Welcome to Angelcynn Origins, the podcast that delves into the rich history of early medieval Britain. In this episode, we'll be exploring the life and legacy of one of the most significant figures of this period, King Oswald of Northumbria. Oswald was a warrior king who, despite facing numerous challenges and setbacks, managed to establish himself as a major power in the region, and his reign had a profound impact on the cultural and intellectual development of Northumbria and beyond. We'll be exploring Oswald's early life, including his upbringing amongst the Irish monks of Iona, and his rise to power through his military campaigns, including the Battle of Heavenfield, as well as looking at the Battle of Maserfield. Oswald's legacy extends far beyond just his military achievements. He was a devout Christian who played a key role in spreading the faith throughout Northumbria, and his patronage of the monastery at Lindisfarne helped to establish it as one of the most important centres of learning and scholarship in the medieval world. So join me as we explore the life and legacy of King Oswald of Northumbria, from his humble beginnings as an exile amongst Irish monks, to his rise to power and his enduring impact on the development of early medieval Britain. This is a story that's both truly fascinating and inspiring. Oswald was born in the early 7th century, the son of King Heavenfield of Northumbria and his wife Acca. His early life was shaped by the tumultuous political and religious landscape of 7th century Britain. At the time of Oswald's birth, Northumbria was one of the most powerful kingdoms in Britain, with its borders stretching from the River Humber in the south to the River Forth in the north. However, the kingdom was also divided by rivalries between different royal dynasties, and Oswald's family was no exception. His father had seized the throne from his predecessor and subsequently driven Edwin, the son of the previous King Aella, into exile. After Edwin ended up in East Anglia, he became under the protection of King Radwald, who Aethelfrith attempted to bribe to murder his potential rival for the throne. However, after being persuaded by his wife, Radwald refused to kill Edwin and instead raised an army against Aethelfrith, where the two clashed at the Battle of the River Idle in 616, resulting in Aethelfrith's death. This meant the throne was then passed back to the exiled Edwin. Fearing for their life, Oswald and his siblings were forced to flee to Scotland. And it was during this time in Scotland that Oswald was introduced to Christianity, which would become a defining aspect of his life and reign. He and his family sought refuge with the Irish monks at Iona, a remote island off the western coast of Scotland. The monks, who followed the Celtic tradition of Christianity, provided Oswald with a religious education and instilled in him a deep respect for the teachings of Christ. Oswald's time at Iona also exposed him to the broader political and religious landscape of early medieval Britain. At the time, the island was a centre of learning and scholarship, attracting students and scholars from across Britain and Ireland. It was also a hub for missionary activity, as the monks sought to spread Christianity to pagan kingdoms on the mainland. Through his experience at Iona, Oswald developed a deep sense of faith and purpose, as well as a keen awareness of the political and religious challenges facing his homeland. These experiences would prepare him for his eventual return to Northumbria, where he would play a pivotal role in the spread of Christianity and the consolidation of his kingdom's power. As king, Oswald faced a number of military challenges, including threats from neighbouring kingdoms and rebellions within his own territories. However, he proved to be a skilled and courageous military leader, winning several decisive victories against his enemies. One of his most famous battles was the Battle of Heavenfield, fought against the forces of King Cadwallon of Gwynedd in 634. Despite being outnumbered, Oswald's army emerged victorious. According to the legend, before the battle, Oswald had a vision of Saint Columba, who told Oswald he would be victorious in the preceding battle. Oswald then erected a large wooden cross and prayed for victory, which would come shortly after the battle began. Due to the divine nature of the victory of Oswald's smaller numbers, the site became known in Old English as Heavenfield, which now translates as Heavenfield. Oswald's military campaigns were not always successful. In 642, he faced a major challenge in the form of King Penda of Mercia. King Penda was a powerful pagan ruler who had long been a rival of King Oswald, a devout Christian, who had established himself as a major power in Northumbria. Penda saw Oswald's growing power as a threat to his own authority and sought to challenge him on the battlefield. The two armies met at Maserfield, which is believed to be located near the modern-day town of Oswestry in Shropshire. The battle was fierce and brutal, with both sides fighting fiercely for hours. According to some accounts, King Oswald was armed with a sword that had been blessed by a monk, and he fought valiantly at the head of his troops. Despite Oswald's bravery and military skill, his army was ultimately defeated. Many of his soldiers were killed, and Oswald himself was slain on the battlefield. The exact details of his death are unclear, but some accounts suggest that he was beheaded by Penda's forces. The Battle of Maserfield was a significant setback for the Kingdom of Northumbria, and marked the end of Oswald's reign. After his death, the kingdom was plunged into a period of turmoil, with various rival factions vying for power. The battle is still remembered as a key moment in the history of early medieval Britain. It highlights the ongoing struggles for power and territory that characterized this period, as well as the complex interplay between different religious and cultural traditions. Despite this setback, Oswald's legacy as a military leader and champion of Christianity endured. His victories over the Welsh and his efforts to unify various kingdoms of England laid the foundations for the political and cultural development of Northumbria in the centuries to come. Oswald's greatest legacy, however, was his efforts to spread Christianity through his kingdom. Shortly after his return to Northumbria, he invited missionaries from the church to come and help him establish Christianity as the dominant religion. These missionaries, led by St. Aidan, set up a monastery on the island of Lindisfarne and began to preach the gospel to the local population. Oswald himself played an active role in the conversion process, using his influence and resources to support the work of the missionaries. Under Oswald's leadership, Northumbria became a centre for Christian scholarship and culture, with monasteries and churches springing up throughout the kingdom. Many of these institutions produced important religious texts, such as the Lindisfarne Gospels, which were regarded as one of the most important works of early medieval art. Oswald's support for Christianity was so fervent that he was even willing to go to war to protect the interests of the church. King Oswald's reign was a period of great significance in the history of Northumbria, marked by his remarkable leadership and his efforts to promote Christianity. His courage and military prowess enabled him to secure his kingdom against external threats, while his piety and devotion to the church inspired a cultural and intellectual flourishing that would endure for centuries to come. Oswald's legacy as a Christian king and martyr continues to be celebrated in the Northumbrian region, where his memory is commemorated through numerous churches, schools, and other institutions named after him. His impact on the spread of Christianity in England is also reflected in the fact that he is considered a saint by both the Roman Catholic and Anglican churches. Another interesting fact to note is that the character Aragorn from J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings was based on King Oswald. Tolkien was particularly drawn to Oswald's reputation for his courage, piety, and his commitment to justice and righteousness. These were all qualities that Tolkien admired and sought to portray in his own work, and he saw Oswald as a kindred spirit who embodied many of the values and ideals that he sought to explore in his writing. There are several specific elements of Aragorn's character and story that are directly inspired by Oswald's life and legacy. For example, both men were exiles who spent years wandering in the wilderness, living off the land and fighting against the enemies of their people. Both men are known for their military prowess and the ability to inspire their troops, and both men are ultimately called upon to lead their people in a great struggle against a powerful enemy. Another way in which Tolkien drew on Oswald's legacy was through the use of language and symbolism. The name Aragorn is derived from the Old English word Erendel, which was a term used to describe a figure of mythic significance who was associated with the morning star and dawn. This term was also used in Anglo-Saxon poetry to describe Christ, and it's likely that Tolkien saw in Oswald a kind of earthly embodiment of this figure, who is known for his spiritual strength and his commitment to the cause of righteousness. Overall, the character Aragorn is a powerful example of how Tolkien drew on the history and mythology of early medieval Britain to create a rich and compelling world that has captivated readers for generations. By drawing on the legacy of figures like King Oswald of Northumbria, Tolkien was able to infuse his work with a sense of depth and authenticity that helped to make it one of the most enduring works of fantasy literature in the modern era. In conclusion, King Oswald's life and achievements represent a shining example of Christian leadership and piety. His devotion to the church and his efforts to promote Christianity through his kingdom helped to lay the foundations for the cultural and intellectual flourishing that would define Northumbria in centuries to come. Through his courage, wisdom and faith, King Oswald left an indelible mark on the history of England, and his legacy continues to inspire and guide us to this day. And that's all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and spending some of your time here with me. I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Please feel free to follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and anywhere else you like to listen to your podcasts. Like it, share it, rate it, and all that good stuff. It would really mean a great deal to me. Join me next time as we delve further into the world of the Anglo-Saxons as we continue to explore their remarkable society, culture, and everyday lives. Until then, take care and stay curious. Bye-bye. And his reign had a profound impact on the cultural and intellectual development. Intellectual? That's not a word.